The average person will decide within the first 7 seconds of meeting someone new whether or not they like them. And when I first met Paul, I hated him.
Well, I wasn't too crazy about Harrison either. But in our defense, we were introduced in a very poor way. When I first started at Brooks, the hockey team was taking a lot of heat for being cocky and arrogant after they won the small school New England championship. So, it was a coded inside joke when Vito introduced Henry Cormier, Jack Goodwin, and I to a group of our new classmates, and immediately they identified us as Cardigan hockey recruits, and unbeknownst to us, that came with a certain stigma.
As soon as those three had walked in the room, we made a big fuss about them, and Matt Nightingale jumped up and immediately introduced himself with a, "Hi, I'm Connor Moore. Nice to meet you."
Right after I shook Matt's hand, the rest of the room jumped out of their seats yelling, "Oh, new hockey recruits, please have my seat." It was obvious that we were the butt of the joke.
While I admit this was kind of mean and totally uncalled for, we'd had our fill of varsity hockey players in our grade. Thanks, Vito.
Not only had we clearly gotten off on the wrong note, to add insult to injury, Harrison happened to live right down the hall from me.
But actually, our living situation helped things out. The first time I walked into Paul's room, I immediately asked about the Italian flag on his wall. And I don't remember his exact response, but I remember changing my mind in that instant. My instincts had failed me, and it turns out I was completely wrong about that dude over there.
Harrison knew me so well at this point, I was a contact in his phone as Capozzi. Not even Paul Capozzi or just Paul. But in all seriousness, Harrison started to show me around and introduce me to you people.
On top of this, we both forged a really strong relationship with Paul's sophomore roommate, Sam Epstein. It was a great time, and I wouldn't trade it for anything else. We have so many odd stories from this period. For example, during Christmas break, Sam and I discovered that Paul had bought and devoured 32 bags of peach rings and had subsequently come down with a pretty bad case of tooth decay.
But don't you worry, I've flossed every night since January 4th, 2014.
That's a weird brag.
Another delightful story from sophomore year is when I was returning from practice late one night, tired, I opened my door to a determined Sam and Harrison. Sam, with a hammer in hand, trying to beat the lock off my food chest to get my goldfish. As you can see, I was the alpha male in this odd friend group.
Things were also helped along in our relationship by the fact that Paul and I, were in the same Willie Waters history class.
I do not consider myself to be a history scholar. In fact, I would say I almost know nothing about history. If it wasn't for Harrison, I would not have passed this world history class.
Which is a great segue to another story of ours. Since Paul was more or less drowning in the vast ocean of historical knowledge, I'd let him copy my notes from time to time, which coincidentally, I'd usually copy from a website.
This brilliant, ethically compromised plan obviously did not work in our favor, or should I say my favor. As it turns out, several other kids had been copying those notes from that very same website. And of course, all of those kids happened to be sitting next to each other on that day, except for Harrison. That's right, your Mr. Senior Prefect, Harrison Rice, copied notes as a sophomore. Probably should rethink that choice.
Well, it's too late for that. All right. Anyway, the best part of this story is that I was seated right across from the row of miscreants, and Mr. Waters was coming around checking our notes. He looked at mine and moved on. But when he came to Paul, he looked at his, and then the person's next to him and said, "Wait, why do your notes look like his notes?" And as Mr. Waters pieced it all together, my notes were tucked away deep in my backpack where they'd never be seen again.
As my close friends would know, Big Mike, my father, was not pleased. Before we move on, cheating in any form is literally the dumbest thing you can do. Even though we had a funny experience from it, it's totally not worth it.
Anywho, the winter of that year was easily, undeniably, and without equal, the most fun I've ever had at Brooks. Paul, Sam, and I were inseparable. But soon things would change. As we received our room assignments for junior year, Paul, Sam, and I had all been placed in different dorms.
And as we came back in that fall, we found out that we did not share any activities and had no classes together. We barely got to see each other.
This was tough for a while, and we didn't do anything about it for a lot of reasons, but especially on account of junior year stress. But when Sam was kicked out that spring for copying, we realized we weren't hanging out anymore.
Hearing the news of Sam made us both realize we had wasted all of junior year and missed out on what would have been another great year together.
As soon as housing forms were released for our senior year, we both put Thorne as our first choice, and we got it.
When we returned for senior year, we felt more or less shafted because we had not received the rooms next to each other that we had wanted, but nevertheless, we ended up having the rooms closest to each other.
Just that they were right on top of each other, one floor apart. But this didn't stop us. We started to refer to ourselves as roommates, even though we weren't in the same room. There was even talk of sawing a hole in the ceiling of my room and sawing a hole in the floor of his to put in a firefighter's pole for quick entry. My roommate, Steve, and I would often be drifting off to sleep when Paul would burst through the door at midnight with a, "Sup, roommates, let's watch Feld."
Feld is short for Seinfeld, which quickly became a late-night favorite for the boys of 201/101. Things were going well. It was like getting the gang back together. Even though we lost Sam, we had gained Steven and my roommate Matt McCormick, or Mac if you prefer. But sadly, this is the last time Mac will be mentioned in this speech because he will find some way to make this about himself.
But don't get us wrong. We fought constantly, and most of the time it was over really stupid stuff. For example, Paul and I were in the same apes class this year, along with his roommate, who's already been mentioned in the speech. Anyway, before every test, Dr. Wall would have us play a game of apes-themed Jeopardy, and we took this very seriously.
Our group was named the Hats, the Manhattan Hats. Our team not only had the best name, but we were easily the best dressed. Each of us brought hats on these days to wave them in the air after each question we got right. This was followed by the New York Rangers goal song.
For those of you who don't quite know what that might sound like, just picture the three of us yelling, "Hats!" as loud as possible, bothering everyone in the class. But one cold December day, we forgot our hats, and Paul ran back to grab some. He quickly burst into my room and took a bunch of Stevens, which made Steven very angry with Paul.
To clarify, these were not just any of Steven's hats. These were his prestigious and most cherished visors. I don't think I've ever met someone who has had such a passion for visors like Steven. Well, Steven started to have a cow. He yelled at me and banned me from his room. But of course, I had to bring Harrison in the middle of it.
So this put me in a tough spot between the two of them. Steven was very upset. But Paul was not that upset. So in the interest of calming Steven, who we all know is a little ill-tempered, I believe I sided with Steven. But I remember that probably half an hour later, we were all in the same room watching Feld like nothing had happened. Even though we'd fight a lot, it would all be fine in less than an hour.
The boys in 201/101 were rocking and rolling. Unfortunately, 2 months later, the roommates quickly went from 4 to 3. We all found ourselves on the losing end of a DC, and once again, Harrison and I would have to say goodbye to one of our best friends.
Those few days can only be described in 2 words. Really lame. My corner double and Thorne became a corner single. Frankly, I was sadder than I'd been in a long while. But if it wasn't for my other roommates, I'd probably still be moping about it today. I spent as much time as I could with them that week. We spent countless hours playing Halo and watching hockey, and I'm so grateful that they were there for me at my lowest point.
These stories may just sound like stories about our time together at Brooks, but they symbolize a lot more than that. To us, they show how we came together as a family throughout our time here.
The term we came across to describe this is family by choice. We weren't born into it, and we certainly didn't marry into it, which is probably kind of weird because it'd be some sort of polygamy, I'm sure. But we didn't even really choose it. It was just something that kind of happened through shared experiences.
Harrison and I might be some of the most different people you've ever met, but we share the fact that our actual blood-related family live hundreds of miles away from here. We virtually never get to see them.
Through this, we realized we needed a strong support system to carry on throughout high school. The bi-weekly phone calls to mom and dad weren't cutting it, and they can't be there all the time. They will never know what's going on because odds are they won't even meet half the people that you interact with here on a daily basis.
You need an in-house family who knows what's going on and knows exactly what you're going through. You need these people to lift you up when you're at your best and to take care of you when you're at your worst. During your time here, there are going to be some tough parts. It's literally impossible that it's all going to be dandy all 4 years. But take comfort in knowing that your family's here to help you through these times.
So if you take anything away from this speech, take this. Find your family. Look around this chapel. I know that each and every one of you can look at someone here and know that they have your back, no matter what. Someone that you would go out of your way for regularly. Think about those people and know that they're your family.
For me, even though it's a completely metaphorical family, It is such a relief and a good feeling knowing that they are here with me every step of the way. Friends like this in your lives will always be there when you might not be at your best, but certainly not at your worst, when it's just you on a daily basis. For example, during the winter season, Harrison would show up 15 minutes before each of my games to do our pregame ritual, which includes us pretending to shoot each other with a fictional Star Wars weapon known as the pulse cannon. Yeah, it's weird, not that cool or exciting to you guys, but this meant a lot to me.
So keep these people in your lives, even if you have an absolutely awful first impression of them. Hold them close. Enjoy every laugh, every adventure, every stupid note-copying story, every disaster, every weird pregame handshake, every episode of Seinfeld, every bag of peach rings, every bizarre meeting, and every single moment, because life's too short not to spend with the people who make it worth living. Thanks, and good luck.